Hi, everyone. Welcome back to this channel. Today, we're diving into ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. We'll explore common misconceptions therapists have about ADHD and how we can better serve clients with this diagnosis. Whether you're a practicing therapist, a counselor in training, this video is for you. So let's get started. So, we're going to start with some common misunderstandings about ADHD, starting with the impact on relationships and emotional health. So, let's talk about relationships and how ADHD can throw some unexpected curveballs. A lot of times, people with ADHD struggle with things like missing social cues or forgetting important plans, and it's easy for others to see this as carelessness. But that's not it at all. It's the way ADHD impacts attention, impulse control, and memory. And when these issues pile up, it can lead to strained relationships and even feelings of shame. Here's where it gets tricky. Some of these social struggles might look similar to what we see in autism. For instance, both ADHD and autism can involve things like interrupting a conversation or missing emotional shifts. But the reasons behind those behaviors are totally different. With ADHD, the issue is usually related to attention or impulsivity. Maybe they're so excited to share their thoughts that they jump in before someone's finished, or their mind is bouncing around so much that they don't notice a subtle facial expression. On the other hand, with autism, these behaviors come from differences in how someone processes social information. They might not pick up on those unspoken social rules because that's not how their brain works. This is why it's so important for us as therapists to dig into why these things are happening. Is your client interrupting because they can't hold back their thoughts? Or are they unsure about when it's their turn to talk? Are they missing eye contact because they're distracted? Or is it more about sensory overload? And these aren't small details, they make a huge difference in how we approach therapy. Also, let's not forget how much shame people with ADHD carry around. They often feel like they're constantly messing things up, especially in their relationships. One of the best things that we can do is help them separate their struggles from self worth. When they realize, hey, this isn't about me being lazy or not caring, this is my ADHD. It's like a weight gets lifted. The more we can help clients understand what's really going on and show them their challenges don't make them less than, the better shot that they have at building stronger relationships and feeling good about themselves. And that's what it's all about, right? As therapists, we might also be focusing a little too much on behavior. So let's be honest. It's really tempting to jump straight into problem solving mode with ADHD clients. You hear about their struggles with missed deadlines or disorganized spaces, and your brain goes planners, apps, alarms. But here's the thing, most clients with ADHD have already tried those strategies. They've probably tried all the strategies. And if they're sitting in front of you, it's because those tools either didn't work or didn't stick. What often gets overlooked is why these tools didn't work. Was the planner abandoned because it didn't feel intuitive? Did setting alarms just add to their anxiety? This is where we need to slow down and validate their experience. Clients with ADHD often feel like they're failing at stuff that's supposed to fix them, and that adds to the spiral of shame. Instead of leading with tools, start by exploring their relationship with ADHD. How do they understand their challenges? How do they feel about the strategies they've already tried? Research backs this up. Clients are more likely to engage in behavioral strategies when they feel empowered and understood, not fixed. Then work to find solutions that genuinely fit their lifestyle. If a planner feels too rigid, maybe a voice memo app is a better match. If alarms stress them out, could a habit tracker or visual reminders be less overwhelming? Collaborative problem solving shows clients that you're on their team, and that's a game changer. Next up is the masking phenomenon. And here's something therapists miss all the time, masking. Clients with ADHD can be incredibly good at looking like they've got it all together. They'll meet deadlines, ace presentations, or keep their family running smoothly. But behind that polished exterior, they're barely hanging on, and it's exhausting. This ability to mask their ADHD often leads therapists to assume that they're doing fine or that their struggles are minor. But masking doesn't mean challenges go away. It means they're hidden. And the cost? Burnout, anxiety, and a ton of shame. Clients often think, if I'm doing so well on the outside, why do I feel so broken on the inside? Research supports this. Masking is linked to higher levels of emotional exhaustion and lower self-esteem. And the pressure to maintain that facade can be crushing. So how do we as therapists get past the mask? Ask thoughtful, open-ended questions that invite honesty. Instead of, how's work going? Try, how do you feel about how things are going at work? Or even, what do you wish people understood about how you're feeling right now? These kinds of questions create space for clients to share what's really happening beneath the surface. And when they do open up, resist the urge to fix it right away. Acknowledge how hard it must be to carry that weight. Let them feel seen. Sometimes that's the first step to breaking down the mask and helping them feel safe enough to be real, not just with you, but with themselves. And the DSM is a useful tool, but let's be real, it's not perfect, especially when it comes to ADHD. The clinical criteria often miss some of the most significant ways ADHD shows up in real life. So here's where therapists need to pay extra attention. We'll start with sensory and emotional dysregulation. ADHD isn't just about losing your keys or forgetting appointments. A lot of clients live with sensory and emotional challenges that the DSM doesn't really capture. Maybe they're hypersensitive to noises, smells, or textures, or they feel emotions so intensely that they can go from zero to overwhelmed in a split second. Ever had a client describe how they ruminate for hours over something that seems minor to everyone else? That's ADHD too. What's tricky is that these experiences don't show up in diagnostic criteria, but they're central to the lived experiences of ADHD. Research highlights that emotional dysregulation is often a core aspect of ADHD linked to difficulties in managing frustration, anger, or even excitement. And if we ignore these aspects, we're missing huge pieces of the puzzle. When a client shares these challenges, validate them. Let them know it's not just being dramatic or overreacting. You can also help them find strategies for grounding themselves, like mindfulness or sensory friendly tools, but don't rush to fix these issues. Sometimes just naming and normalizing their experience can be transformative. And another big one that the DSM misses is that age of onset issue. The DSM requires that ADHD symptoms start in childhood. And that's fine in theory, but in practice, it leads to a lot of misdiagnoses in adults. Why? Because not everyone's symptoms are obvious as a kid. Maybe they were the quiet daydreamer in class who didn't cause trouble, or maybe their parents' structure masked their struggles. For many adults, ADHD only becomes clear when life gets more demanding, like starting college, juggling a career, or raising kids. And if their coping mechanisms worked for a while, they might not realize anything was wrong until those strategies stop working. As therapists, we need to take a thorough developmental history during assessments, ask about things like childhood report cards, family dynamics, and early coping strategies, but also recognize that just because their ADHD wasn't obvious in elementary school doesn't mean it wasn't there. Adults with ADHD often have a light bulb moment when they realize their lifelong struggles weren't about laziness or being bad at adulting, but something that they've been dealing with all along. And ADHD rarely comes alone. It often hangs out with anxiety, depression, and trauma, which makes assessments tricky. Clients might come in with symptoms that look a lot like one thing, but are actually something else or a mix of both. For example, take the exhaustion and overwhelm of anxiety. Is it anxiety, or is it the emotional dysregulation and burnout from undiagnosed ADHD? Or what about trauma-related hypervigilance? That can look a lot like the distractibility of ADHD. This is where using tools like the Adult ADHD Self-Report Scale helps, but don't stop there. Listen to the client's story. What patterns do they notice? What feels true for them? Research has shown that client narratives combined with structured tools provide a much clearer picture than one approach alone. And ADHD and autism can look alike in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to struggles with attention, social interaction, and sensory processing. But the reasons behind these challenges are different. For example, someone with ADHD might miss social cues because they're distracted or their mind is bouncing between thoughts. They may genuinely want to connect with others but struggle to stay present in the conversation. With autism, missing social cues is often about interpreting them differently. It's not about distraction, but about perceiving and processing social information in a unique way. Another key difference lies in routines. Many people with autism rely on routines for a sense of safety and predictability. A change in their routine can cause significant distress. On the flip side, someone with ADHD might struggle to stick to a routine at all. They might forget it, get bored, or abandon it for something more stimulating. The sensory piece is also nuanced. Both conditions can involve sensory sensitivities, but again, the why matters. ADHD-related sensory challenges come from a heightened sensitivity in moments of overwhelm or stress. For autism, sensory sensitivities are more consistent as a part of how someone experiences the world, often tied to their neurology rather than their emotional state. When working with clients, look for these distinctions, and remember, somebody can have both ADHD and autism. Diagnosing one doesn't rule out the other. Oppositional defiant disorder is another diagnosis that's frequently misapplied or misunderstood in the context of ADHD. Kids and sometimes adults with ADHD might get labeled as oppositional because of their impulsivity or forgetfulness. For instance, a child with ADHD might blurt out no to a request or forget to follow through on a chore, but it's not coming from a place of defiance. It's often about impulsivity, distraction, or frustration in the moment. With ODD, the opposition is intentional and rooted in emotional response to authority or perceived unfairness. A hallmark of ODD is a pattern of anger, irritability, and defiant behaviors that go beyond what you'd expect for the situation. For example, a child with ODD might argue with adults persistently, deliberately break the rules, or act in a way that's clearly about resisting authority. What's tricky is that untreated ADHD can lead to behaviors that look like ODD over time. If a child is constantly scolded for forgetting tasks or struggling to sit still, they might develop resentment or oppositional behaviors as a defense mechanism. That's why it's so important to address the underlying ADHD symptoms first. For ODD, strategies like building trust, setting clear boundaries, and using collaborative problem solving can be effective. For ADHD, the focus might be more on helping the client manage impulsivity or improve executive functioning skills. So, what's ADHD and what is it not? Here's a quick cheat sheet for what's more likely to be ADHD versus something else. Attention difficulties. ADHD is more about inconsistent focus or being easily distracted. With autism, it's more about intense focus on preferred topics or difficulty shifting attention. Impulsivity. This screams ADHD, blurting things out, interrupting, or jumping into situations without thinking. Difficulty interpreting social cues. Think autism if it's about misreading cues. Think ADHD if it's about missing them altogether because of distraction. Anger or defiance. With ODD, it's about emotional response to authority. With ADHD, it's more likely a reaction to frustration or impulsivity. When we take time to untangle what's ADHD and what it's not, we can offer more targeted and effective support. And honestly, that's where the real magic happens. Therapy for ADHD clients isn't about fixing them, it's about empowering them to work with their unique brain wiring and rediscovering their strengths. So let's talk about some approaches that therapists often overlook but can make a world of difference. Start by teaching clients what ADHD really is, how it affects the brain, how it translates to everyday behaviors. Explain that ADHD is not a moral failing or sign of laziness. It's a neurodevelopmental condition. For example, ADHD impacts the dopamine system, which makes tasks that aren't immediately rewarding feel nearly impossible to start. Here's where self-compassion comes in. Many clients who come to therapy are carrying a backpack full of shame, blaming themselves for their struggles. Help them unpack that load. Once I had a client who described ADHD as feeling like they were always playing catch up, which hits hard for many clients. Validate those feelings and remind them that their challenges are not personal inadequacies, but they're living in a world that isn't designed for ADHD brains. In a simple, transformative exercise, help them reframe how they talk to themselves. Instead of saying, I'm so lazy for not finishing that project, have them try saying, I struggle to focus because my ADHD makes it hard to break down overwhelming tasks. We want to look at individualized accommodations. One-size-fits-all solutions don't work with ADHD. Clients have often tried planners, alarms, or apps only to feel like failures when those tools didn't stick. Instead, get curious about what they've already tried and what's worked, even in small ways. Build on their existing strengths. For example, I had a client who shared that putting on her shoes at home helped her to feel like she was shifting into work mode. Another client in the past mentioned that breaking tasks into smaller, urgent steps helped them stay on track. These quirky strategies highlight key ADHD principle. It's not about using the right tool, but finding the tool that works for them. Collaboratively experiment with accommodations. Maybe it's keeping a whiteboard in their kitchen, setting reminders on their phone, or using body doubling, so that would be working alongside somebody else to stay accountable. Celebrate what sticks and let go of what doesn't. It's part of the process. Other therapeutic tools that you can use are mindfulness and acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT. Mindfulness isn't about forcing clients to sit still for 30 minutes. It's about helping them notice what's going on in their brains without judgment. For somebody with ADHD, that might look like realizing, oh, my brain just jumped to 5 different thoughts during this conversation, and then gently bringing themselves back. ACT is a perfect fit for ADHD therapy because it encourages clients to accept challenges instead of fighting them. I've heard ADHD be described as like their brain being water, adapting to challenges but falling apart when there's no structure. ACT can help clients accept those fluid tendencies while teaching them to focus on what truly matters. Through ACT, you can help clients clarify their values, like being present with their family or excelling in a meaningful career, and align their actions with those values even when their ADHD creates roadblocks. And ADHD can be frustrating, but it doesn't always have to be so serious. A little creativity and humor can go a long way in making therapy engaging and effective. For instance, try an exercise where clients write emails from their ADHD self to their logical self. What would their ADHD say about why they procrastinate and get distracted? Maybe their ADHD self feels misunderstood or just wants a break. Externalizing these thoughts makes them less overwhelming and can even lead to laughs in session. Another fun idea, have clients name their ADHD brain. One client might call theirs Zoomy because of how fast their thoughts race. Giving ADHD a persona can help clients create a playful distance from it and from their struggles and brainstorm solutions collaboratively. Therapy for ADHD is not about forcing clients into a neurotypical mold. It's about understanding their world, embracing their quirks, and co-creating strategies that fit their lives. When we approach ADHD with education, creativity, and a dose of humor, we're not just helping clients manage symptoms, we're helping them thrive. And when it comes to ADHD, understanding how it interacts with gender, culture, and the demands of modern life is key. Not every distraction, impulse, or struggle to focus equals ADHD. But for some people, these challenges can cross the threshold into what the DSM calls clinically significant distress or impairment in social, academic, or occupational functioning. So let's unpack this in a way that bridges the personal and diagnostic realities. ADHD doesn't look the same in everyone. Boys are often the classic picture of hyperactivity, running, blurting out, and struggling to sit still. Girls, on the other hand, may internalize their symptoms. Instead of hyperactivity, they experience something called mental hyperactivity, a nonstop stream of thoughts, worries, or overanalysis. Because the DSM criteria often focuses on external behaviors, many girls and women don't meet the threshold for diagnosis until much later in life. They may present as perfectionists, working overtime to mask their struggles and meet social expectations. These clients might say things like, "I've always felt scattered, but I just thought I needed to try harder." When assessing women or girls, dig deeper than the surface behaviors. Ask about how they handle the demands of daily life. Are they exhausted from trying to appear put together? Are they experiencing emotional distress or shame because they feel like they're falling short? Recognizing these patterns can be a game changer for clients who have felt misunderstood for years. And let's be honest, no human brain, neurotypical or ADHD, was designed to thrive in today's world of constant demands. ADHD brains, in particular, face unique challenges. The DSM highlights symptoms of disorganization, forgetfulness, or difficulty sustaining attention, but modern life amplifies these issues in ways that it doesn't account for. Take the DSM's criteria about clinically significant distress. For someone with ADHD, this might mean that they're unable to keep up with work deadlines, forgetting important family events, or feeling overwhelmed by basic tasks. But even neurotypical people can feel scattered or distracted in a world that expects them to manage emails, errands, childcare, self-care, all of that all at once, all the time. The difference lies in how these challenges impact functioning. If someone's struggles are manageable with a good planner or some extra effort, it's not ADHD. But if those same struggles are causing significant emotional distress or interfering with their ability to succeed at work, school, or relationships, that's where a diagnosis becomes relevant. As therapists, we need to help clients untangle whether their challenges stem from ADHD or simply an overstimulating world. Either way, our role is to help them develop realistic expectations and strategies that work for their brain, not society's impossible standards. Cultural norms shape how ADHD symptoms are expressed, perceived, and even diagnosed. In some cultures, behaviors like impulsivity or forgetfulness might be stigmatized as laziness or irresponsibility, and in others, certain ADHD traits like hyperfocus or quick thinking might be celebrated or normalized. These cultural expectations can mask ADHD or exacerbate its impact. For example, a client from a culture that prioritizes collective responsibility might feel intense guilt for forgetting to help a family member. Another client from an individualistic culture might feel deep shame for not being able to self-manage in the way that their peers do. The DSM emphasizes that symptoms must occur in two or more settings, so think home or work or school, and cause clinically significant distress. As therapists, we can apply this lens while also recognizing how cultural pressures may influence where and how symptoms show up. For example, a client might thrive at work because they can hyper-focus on tasks, but struggle at home where there's less structure. So thinking about what therapists can do, you can clarify thresholds for diagnosis, educate clients about the DSM's criteria, particularly the importance of clinically significant distress or impairment. This can help them understand the difference between ADHD and the normal stress of modern life. We want to pay attention to how ADHD manifests differently in men and women. Be particularly vigilant with clients who internalize their symptoms or mask them through perfectionism. We help clients identify whether their struggles are due to ADHD or societal pressures. Encourage them to focus on values-based goals rather than trying to do it all. And explore how cultural norms influence your client's experience of ADHD. Collaborate on strategies that work within their cultural framework, whether that means setting boundaries, advocating for accommodations, or simply reframing their challenges. When it comes to ADHD, tools and resources can make a huge difference, but only when they're tailored to the individual. Clients often come to therapy overwhelmed by advice that feels generic or doesn't work for their specific situation. As therapists, we can bridge this gap by providing tools that feel relevant, accessible, and empowering. So starting with assessment tools, we want to move beyond checklists. The adult ADHD self-report scale is a good starting point, but it's not the full picture. ADHD symptoms vary widely. Not every client fits the stereotypical image of a person who can't sit still or focus, and that's where client narratives come in. During assessments, dig into their day-to-day experiences. What tasks or environments do they struggle with the most? How do they feel about their productivity or ability to meet expectations? Have they developed coping mechanisms, even unconscious ones, to help them get by? For example, some clients might describe hyperfocus, getting so engrossed in a task that they forget to eat or sleep. Others might talk about their tendency to procrastinate until the last minute, then suddenly become incredibly productive under pressure. These details are key to understanding the client's unique relationship with their ADHD. When assessing, remember to consider co-occurring conditions. Many clients with ADHD also experience anxiety, depression, or trauma. This overlap can muddy the diagnostic waters, so use your tools wisely and supplement them with open-ended conversations. We want to provide educational resources and ideally help them to reduce isolation. ADHD can feel lonely, especially for clients who have been misdiagnosed or misunderstood for years. Recommending educational materials is one way to help them feel less isolated. For clients who prefer bite-sized learning, point them towards podcasts, YouTube channels, or even Reddit communities where people with ADHD share their experiences. These can provide a sense of solidarity and help clients recognize that they are not alone in their struggles. Here's a tip though. You want to be mindful of information overload. Clients with ADHD might already feel overwhelmed by their to-do lists. Instead of dumping a long list of resources, like I do with the last slide of this presentation, recommend one or two tailored to their immediate needs. And then when looking at the workplace, we want to look at accommodations and we want to practice some advocacy when we can. For adults with ADHD, the workplace can be a minefield of challenges. Deadlines feel impossible, meetings drain their focus, a never-ending inbox keeps them stuck in a cycle of procrastination and guilt. As therapists, we can help clients reframe these challenges and advocate for accommodations that play to their strengths. So some ideas might include flexible scheduling. If possible, clients might benefit from starting their work later in the day or taking breaks to recharge throughout the day. We want to look at task prioritizing, so suggest that they ask their employer for clarity on which tasks are most critical. Visual aids like whiteboards or to-do lists can help with this. You can also recommend body doubling. For clients who struggle with task initiation, body doubling, working alongside someone else can be a game changer. Encourage them to ask a coworker or a friend for support, or consider virtual body doubling services. And some strategies for daily life. Tools like planners, alarms, apps often come up in discussions about ADHD, but they're not one size fits all. Some clients have already tried these strategies and found them ineffective, which can feel discouraging. Instead of pushing prepackaged solutions, collaborate with them to identify what works best. So you might want to try gamifying some of the tasks. Some clients thrive on making mundane tasks fun. Encourage them to set timers and challenge themselves to beat the clock or reward themselves for completing steps. We want to externalize accountability. Suggest that they create visual reminders, sticky notes, whiteboards, or phone notifications that keep important tasks front and center. And we can leverage their hyperfocus. If a client tends to hyperfocus on specific interests, explore how they can align their work or study habits with those interests to boost engagement. And then taking it beyond the office, here's what therapists often miss. ADHD doesn't live in a vacuum. The challenges clients face are deeply tied to the environments they navigate daily, whether it's a chaotic workplace, cultural expectations, or the sheer number of decisions that they're expected to make in a day. The tools that we offer need to account for these realities. We should always ask, how is modern society shaping their experience of ADHD? What structural changes, like workplace policies or family dynamics, could ease their burden? Empowering clients to take control, whether that's advocating for themselves at work or reframing how they view their struggles, can be transformative. Our job isn't just to hand them tools, but to help them build a toolkit that feels uniquely theirs. ADHD is so much more than forgetfulness, hyperactivity, or struggling to sit still. It's a condition that weaves into every corner of a person's life, shaping how they think, feel, and relate to others and navigate the world. It's emotional, it's relational, it's about how people experience time, stress, and expectations. As therapists, our most valuable skill isn't giving advice or prescribing tools, it's listening. It's meeting clients where they are, validating their struggles, and helping them see that their ADHD is not a personal failure, but it's a part of who they are. From there, we can collaborate to build strategies that feel authentic and sustainable. And one more jump on my soapbox. We're working in a society that wasn't designed for ADHD brains, or honestly, for any brain to handle the constant productivity, endless multitasking, and 500 things on a to-do list at any given day. A big part of our role is helping clients find balance. This means challenging the systems they've internalized, helping them set realistic expectations, and making space for rest, creativity, and self-compassion. And let's not forget, ADHD is complex. No two clients are the same. Always be curious, always be compassionate, and most importantly, always collaborate. Whether it's building a toolkit of strategies, navigating workplace accommodations, or just holding space for someone to feel seen, small steps can lead to big transformations. So some common missed points just to keep in mind. We want to address executive dysfunction holistically. It's not just about planners and alarms. Look at their environments, their energy levels, their routines, and how their life is structured. Sometimes the solution isn't doing more. It might be removing barriers. You want to empower your clients to set boundaries. Many people with ADHD struggle with saying no, overcommitting, or feeling like they're too much. Help them learn to prioritize themselves and protect their energy. And celebrate their wins, big and small. A lot of clients are used to focusing on what they didn't do and overlook what they have achieved. Celebrate their progress, no matter how small it might seem. ADHD is a topic that I could probably talk about forever, but hopefully today gave you some new perspectives and some practical takeaways. And if this resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe for more videos, and share your thoughts in the comments. What's worked for you? What's worked for your clients? What has surprised you in your work? Let's keep this conversation going. See you next time. And this last slide is just an information overload of a ton of resources that you might be interested in learning more about if you're interested in ADHD. Some of these might be really valuable tools to pass along to your clients. Some of them might just be good information for you to gain outside of the DSM about ADHD and how it works. Thanks so much.